Do you think you take all decisions of your life based on data, facts, reasoning, and others do that too? At least I used to think so, that every decision that I'm making is backed by data, analysis. I'm very logical and rational in terms of the decision that I'm making in my life. Until this incident happened with me. So almost like a decade ago, I was getting out of a meeting. The meeting was in Leela Palace. Leela Palace, you might know, is a five-star hotel in Bangalore. When I was walking out from the hotel towards my car, two gentlemen, very well dressed, came to me. They were wearing nice leather shoes. They had nice leather bags, white shirt, navy blue pant, and their command of the language was very good. They came to me and they showed me their iPad and laptop, which they were looking to sell out because they wanted some money. I looked at the iPad, I looked at the MacBook, and I found them to be really good, well maintained and everything. When I asked them for the pricing, they said it's about 40,000 rupees, which was a steal deal. I was trying to build a business at that point of time and I was very tight on budget, and this seemed like a very good deal to me. So I walked into an ATM, got 40,000 rupees, handed over to them, got the bag from them, and came to my car. When I came to the car to open the bag and see the laptop and iPad I had purchased, I could not find any. They were just cardboards inside. And I was completely shocked how this happened with me. I used to think that, as I said, take decision based on logical reasoning, data, facts, and everything, calculating everything. But I still made this mistake. I was feeling ashamed about myself that I can be so stupid that I can lose money just like that. Even people in my family who got to know that I did that, they were like surprised that how can you make that stupid mistake? And for quite many years in my life, I could not understand why I made such a major mistake. And it was only after so many years I stumbled on this book influenced by Robert Cialdini that I realized my mistake. Robert Cialdini is a professor emeritus of psychology and marketing at Arizona State University. He's also a visiting professor of psychology, business and marketing at the Stanford University. He has worked for decades in the field of psychology and marketing before coming up with these 7 principles of influence in his book. The scammers are actually making use of one of the key principles which the author has highlighted in the book. The book has been a bestseller for more than 12 years now. I'll try to summarize the book and help you understand each of these principles so that you don't lose money like me. And in fact, you are able to get the job, get the business that you're looking out for. Let's go through them one by one. The first principle is reciprocity. The rule says that we should try to repay what another person has provided us. If a woman does us a favor, we should do her one in return. If a man sends us a birthday present, we should remember his birthday with a gift of our own. If a couple invites us to a party, we should be sure to invite them to one of ours. So Robert talks about an interesting experiment in his book in which what the waiters did was they were handing mint to people before they were taking orders. And what they saw was every time they gave a mint before taking an order, there was a 3.3% increase in the tip that they got. So they repeated that experiment, and this time they placed 2 mints instead of 1. And surprisingly, the tip jumped from 3.3% to 14%. So while they were delivering pretty much the same service, same food, everything being the same, just because of the principle of reciprocity, they were getting such a jump in the tip that they were getting. This is an interesting human psychology at play here. The way we have evolved to live in a society is by doing a barter system. If somebody brings something to us, we are hardwired to bring something to them. There's another interesting example Robert has highlighted in the book of Hare Krishna Foundation in the US. They were able to raise millions of dollars in donation just by handing over flowers to anybody who was passing through that area. Now that we know this key principle, how we can utilize it in our own advantage. Let's say we want to get a job, and in order to get the job, we want a referral from somebody. Now, because that somebody does not know you, the chances that the person is going to refer you is very, very low. In order to increase your chances, you have to give something to that person. And that something could be, let's say, a PDF or a book or an article or any sort of help which makes them reciprocate and give you a referral. The second principle is commitment and consistency. Once we make a choice or take a stand, we encounter personal and interpersonal pressures to think and behave consistently with that commitment. This reminds me of a famous dialogue which Salman Khan has made in one of his movies, where he says, "जब मैं commitment कर देता हूँ, तो मैं अपनी भी नहीं सुनता हूँ." And this is true not only for Salman Khan, but for all of us. Once we commit to something, we are more likely to be consistent, stay consistent with that commitment. I think the reason we behave this way has something again to do with the way we have evolved as a society. If we keep flip-flopping on what we say one day and what we do another day, we are not taken seriously. In fact, the trust level the society has on us also goes down, versus if we stay committed and consistent to what we have said yesterday and day before and so on and so forth. In a suburb of California, people were asked to put a huge board, a board saying that drive safely. And when they were asked to put this huge board, they were shown a picture of a beautiful house and a huge board in front of that house. Now, what was happening through that picture was the beauty of the house was completely destroyed or taken away by this huge board saying drive safely. So when they went to people asking them to put such a board in front of their house in their lawn, they got no from pretty much everybody. Now they repeated the experiment again, and this time they asked some of these people to sign a petition. The petition was about keeping California clean. Pretty much everybody who saw that petition, they signed it. 2 weeks after the petition was signed, 75% of these people agreed to put these ugly banners in front of their houses. Now it looks like that keeping California clean and driving safely are not connected, but actually they are. When they signed the petition, they sort of took upon this identity that they are somebody who cares for the public good. And by putting these big ugly banners, they were reinforcing their identity. The author has suggested an interesting way you can get the job that you want. So when you're sitting in an interview, before the interview begins, you have to ask the hiring manager, what are the qualities that you saw in my resume which made you shortlist me for this position? And of course, when you ask this question, the hiring manager will give their own answers in terms of what they like about your profile. And then the interview is quite likely to go in your favor because they would want to stay consistent with what they said in the beginning. The third principle is social proof. This principle states that we determine what is correct by finding out what other people think is correct. Importantly, the principle applies to the way we decide what constitutes correct behavior. We view an action as correct in a given situation to the degree that we see others performing it. A few years ago in Beijing, China, there was a restaurant who wanted to increase their sales. And they wanted to do that without hiring a new chef or hiring an expensive management consultant or lowering the prices. They were wondering if by labeling something differently, they can increase their revenue or not. So they hired a bunch of researchers. And after the study, what they did was that they labeled some of their dishes as most popular. No fancy naming, nothing. And the sale increased by 13 to 20%. The dishes they named as the most popular became the most popular dish. In another experiment, paid actors were asked to go on a busy street and point in a direction. What happened was a lot of people who were passing by from that area also started looking in that direction. You will also see this behavior in yourself when you're buying something on Amazon. You will end up buying something which has very high number of reviews, because that indicates social proof. When we are looking for a job, we can use this principle to our advantage by sharing the work that we have done in the space on social media like LinkedIn. We can also ask some of the seniors, some of the people that know us well, and they have some social proof in the market to give us recommendations. If we take courses and degrees from popular institutes, that also works as a social proof. The fourth principle is authority, which simply says follow an expert. We are hardwired to follow an expert. Again, because we can only take so many decisions from our brain. So it becomes much easier when expert is saying something and we agree to that. Robert has highlighted a very interesting and probably one of the scariest experiment which proves this point very, very strongly. So in this experiment, there were two participants and a doctor. One participant was labeled as the teacher The other participant was labeled as the learner. Now the learner was made to sit on a chair which was exposed to electric wires, and the teacher was made to sit in a room which had a control panel, and on this control panel there were levers which can be pulled to give electric shock to the learner. Now what the doctor wanted to understand, who was sitting along with the teacher, was how good are we with memorization? How good are we with learning stuff? And the instruction which was given to the teacher was to give an electric shock to the learner if they make a mistake, and to keep on increasing the electric shock if the learner is making a mistake. The teachers became quite anxious that they would have to do such a thing. They would have to torture that person. To relax them a little bit, the doctor told them that the electric shock will be mild and nothing significant will happen if you give them electric shock. So the process started. The teacher started asking questions and the learner was responding. Everything was going fine. But after a few questions, the learner was not able to answer. And that's when the teacher gave the first shock. And then he asked again and gave the second shock. And then, as the doctor had said, the shock intensity had to go up, and it kept on going up. In most of the cases, the teacher was sweating, was trembling, was asking the doctor to stop. But because the doctor was saying that no, you have to go on with the process, the teacher kept on increasing the voltage. The learner was crying for help, and in fact, they lost their consciousness by 300 volt, but the teacher was still giving them electric shocks. It was only in 35% of the cases where the teacher did not obey the doctor. Rest 65% of the cases, everybody agreed and gave the increasing amount of shock. The good part of the experiment was that the learner was an actor. There were no electric shock given to anyone. And the doctor was also not a doctor. He was just a guy in a lab coat. That is the power of authority. When we have an authority asking us to do something, it is quite likely that we'll go to whatever extent to get that executed. While this was an extreme experiment, but it broadly confirms the tendency of human beings to agree to an authority, to accept an authority in an area. And just like any other principle, people can misuse any of these principles, but we can also make a good use of this principle by building an authority. You can build an authority in a particular area by working and going deep in that area. And that area could be anything in your career. It could be software, it could be research, it could be marketing, it could be finance. If you are able to go deep and establish your authority, the chances that you will be able to get a job, get that growth, get that promotion is very, very likely. You can in fact build further on this authority by dressing appropriately for the occasion. Why do you think management consultant and top lawyers are dressed in so expensive suits? While they know everything about that space, but they will still not leave anything unturned when it comes to showcasing their authority in the space. The fifth principle is liking. There is nothing more effective in selling anything than getting customers to really believe you like them. Joe Girard, Guinness Book of World Records, greatest car salesman. Joe is registered in Guinness Book of World Records as the biggest car salesman ever. How was he able to do that? He was able to do that by sending cards 12 times in a year to 13,000 of his customers. And what did he write in these letters, in these cards? He just made sure that the customer gets the message that he likes them. And in fact, he liked them genuinely. And because he liked them genuinely and kept reminding them about this, when it came to buying a new car, they always went back to Joe. The author says that few of us would be surprised to learn that we are more influenced by the people we like. For example, our friends. What might be startling to note, however, is that simple liking rule can apply to individuals we've never interacted with closely or even met. In 1954, Tupperware was doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, which was very, very high for those times. And they were not selling it through retail outlets. In their sales model, essentially a neighbor will invite their neighbors, give them refreshments, talk to them, entertain them, and then request to buy a Tupperware. And because they like them, because they are in the social setting, they end up purchasing that Tupperware. Even in cases when ladies had a lot of Tupperware already in their home, they still ended up buying every time they went into that party. That is how strongly the liking principle works. Just like the other principles highlighted in the book, we can also use this principle to our advantage by becoming like Joe, by appreciating our co-workers, by appreciating our subordinates, even by appreciating our seniors, by appreciating the work they are doing, by appreciating what they're wearing, about their discipline, about their fitness, anything which we genuinely like about them. The sixth principle is scarcity. We tend to value things much more if they are limited in supply, if they are scarce. Think about gold. Think about Bitcoin. In fact, FOMO is pretty much that. It is all about scarcity. Marketers try to create a situation where we start feeling that this particular item is very scarce, which creates a lot of demand for that item. And that could be by saying that there are only limited seats, there is a limited edition, there is just few more stocks left. In this book, there's an interesting example where the author is talking about the launch of iPhone 5 and how there was a long queue of people outside the Apple store standing the entire night waiting for the launch to happen. There was a reporter who was covering this whole event. The reporter went to a lady and started talking about what they were doing the entire night. This lady was standing at number 23. She told the reporter that they were talking mostly about the features and told her another interesting story, after which the reporter started stammering. She told her that she exchanged places and in fact she was at number 25. The lady at number 23 liked her bag. She was carrying a shoulder bag of Louis Vuitton of about $3,000. She exchanged that bag and came to 23rd position because there was a rumor that Apple did not had enough iPhones and she did not want to lose that iPhone. This is how much we fear losing something. Again, you can use this principle to your advantage. You can position yourself as a scarce resource. You can position yourself as a scarce resource by working in areas which are still developing and are expected to have high demand in future. You can also position yourself as a scarce resource in your organization by delivering quality output one after the other. Another thing that you can do, which Robert Greene also talks about in his book 48 Laws of Power, is not being available all the time, which will not only position yourself as a scarce resource, but also give you that time which is required to do high quality work, which is not possible when you keep on moving in from one task to the other, responding to every single email, responding to every single WhatsApp. The seventh and the last principle is unity. And the author says that people are inclined to say yes to someone they consider one of them. The author wanted to understand how the psychology of their students related to the psychology of their parents. And in order to do that, he wanted the parents to fill a survey. And he knew it really well that the parents are not going to fill the survey. In most cases, it's only 15% or odd number of people who fill these surveys. So he played a kinship card. He basically said, if you fill the survey, your kids will get 1 extra marks. And pretty much 85-90% of the people filled the survey and sent it on time. He was wondering if he would have done the same experiment with their grandparents, the percentage would have probably been 95-97%. So the principle essentially states that we are willing to do much more for people who are close to us. There is a commonality between them and us. And the way we can use this to our advantage is by figuring out what is common between the person who's hiring us or the person we are selling to. Are they coming from the same city, same state, same college? They have the same interests, follow the same author. Now let's try and understand how we can leverage these principles to increase our chances of getting hired, increase our chances of getting referred. So usually when it comes to making an application, this is how we write an email. We write it as, hi XX, this is with regard to the opening at your firm. I feel my work experience is quite aligned with the JD. Would be great if you could refer or shortlist me for the same. Attached is my resume. Vivek. Instead of the earlier generic draft, we can use these 7 principles to make our email, make our application more appealing. And we can write something like this. Hi XX, I really admire your profile and would like to be at a similar place one day. This is where we are using principle of liking. Then we can write, I have 10 plus years of experience in program management, operations, etc. After graduating from ZZ School of Engineering or Business. This is principle of authority. Then we can write something like this. Coming from a similar background like yours, I have a similar work values and ethics. This is principle of unity, where we're talking about the common college, common city, whatever common we have. Then we can talk about, I have also been awarded ZZ medal during my stint at ABC company or college. This is your principle of scarcity. Then we can write something like this. As you can see from my LinkedIn profile, my managers hold me in high regard and have built thought leadership in XX space. This is principle of social proof. And we can close it by saying, would be a pleasure to work with you. Looking forward, Vivek. And maybe at the end we can say, PS, I found this ebook or article which I think you would find very useful. And this is where we are using principle of reciprocity. Now this kind of email will increase your chances of getting hired significantly. Hoping this helps. This is Vivek signing off. Like, subscribe, share, and take care.